Hello. So my talk is going to be about future-proofing your business using current trends and future trends in software security. So a very specific part of cybersecurity. I'm Adam. I'm a Senior Software Security Solutions Manager at Synopsys in the Software Integrity Group, soon to become Black Duck as they fly us off into the world on our own, leaving them to concentrate on the burgeoning demand for AI-based silicon. They're actually a silicon company. But I won't go into that now, but I will touch on AI, obviously, in this talk. Here's a GDPR notice. Around about 15 years ago, the small company I was working for identified a trend, and that was software security. If I'm honest, Gartner identified the trend. And we went to Israel. This is Israel, and this is the barrier wall between Israel and the West Bank. It's a terrible situation, but it made Israel a leader in security technology. So off we went. We went to see 16 firms in 4 days. I'll say we saw, in quotes, interesting propositions to amazing solutions with proof of concepts by highly talented and motivated, super bright people. And that's where I saw SQL injection for the first time. And I was hooked. I'd been working in application performance, doing load testing and stuff for the decade or so before that. That was a long time ago. So what's happening now? The slide, by the way, is AI generated. Notice the 6 fingers on the right hand. So I've used some projects that Synopsys has done, that some of our partners have done, and some other operators in the field have done, to identify and corroborate what I'm seeing anecdotally anyway as a managing consultant, current trends in software security, and what we're also seeing are those cohorts saying are as what will be future trends in software security. To err is human, but to blame someone else for it, well, it shows management potential, doesn't it? I jest. No, this is a serious problem. A report by Reversing Labs, our partners, identified that there was a 1,300% increase in the last year in open source package repositories circulating with threats in them. So this is no surprise when you look at what Klopp did, not the football manager, the Russian criminal hacking group, with Ipswich Software's Move It file transfer, which was pervasive. Lots of financial entities were using it. And in around about 2021, I believe, they'd identified some vulnerabilities using remote code execution and SQL injection to be able to gain lots of access to lots of things they shouldn't have had access to, Azure environments, IDP, and do the thing that they did, which was everything from ransomware to just bad things. This report also saw that the Python package indexer had a 400% increase in threats alone, which is particularly relevant given AI is using a lot of Python. We see that nearly a third of all breaches involve third-party attack vectors. That means you as a customer, it's possibly not down to you, it's down to your vendor or your supplier. Or as a supplier, it's something you have to be very careful with to make sure, no one actually deliberately goes to have these problems, but it's something you have to be really careful about. And 75% of all external relationships that enable third-party breaches involve software or other technology products and services. So, yeah, we know this, right? I'm not here, as I said in the description, I'm not here to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's back in the 2010s, I think. What I can tell you is about what mature firms are doing about this now. We run a project we call the Building Security and Maturity Model, and it has a huge data pool which I'm going to pull some information out of. But before I do, I should explain a little bit about what that is. So the current data pool is 130 firms. These are firms like Citi, Aon, Trainline, Cisco, the big firms that produce software or have big software commitments inside of those firms. It's been going since 2008, and it's currently in version 14. And these firms, they pay us. We go in and we interview their product engineers, their HR, anyone that touches a software in any way. And we tell them about the current state that year of their software security initiative. And we also take away from that to put into the data pool what becomes a state of software security for that year in the world. And that's where we get the data pool data from. So it's really good for these leaders who change the way the model is. Some activities are retired, some new activities we see coming up. We talk to these people, these senior people, and understand what they see as current threats and new threats, and we start to have new activities. So the model is dynamic. It's great for emergers or people who are bootstrapping software security initiatives, because where do you start? Well, why not start with what these guys started doing years and years ago? It's kept fresh by having the data. If someone hasn't done a BSIM with us for a couple of years, the data goes out, and they're retired. Okay, these are the verticals that we deal with, and what I will say finally, and then I'll move away from BSIM, is it talks about governance. So the management and control of the way that firms produce software and how they do it securely. It talks about intelligence. The smarts, the clever stuff you need to be able to do software securely. And what everybody thinks about when they think about software security on AppSec is SSDL touchpoints. So this is static analysis, code review, security testing, DAST, and so on. And then finally deployment, which is pen testing, cloud environments, incident management. So that's the BSIM. What does it tell us? There we go. Okay. So some of the highlights that came out of it from last year were that vendors are being relied upon to have strong security practices. So these firms, these mature firms, do software well. They do secure software well. They are telling their vendors, you have to at least meet our standard, or in some cases, go above our standard. That grew in last year by 21%. So if you're selling software, you can expect more and more of these kind of stipulations from your customers. If you're buying software, it might be something you might ask them to prove as to how they're producing secure software. As a result, we saw a 22% increase in secure bill of materials. So this is, if you're producing a software product, it's like the ingredients that you might have on a jar of jam. It says what's in it. It's incredibly useful if there is, say a component goes bad, Log4j or OpenSSL. You will know if this is in your suite of software that you have inside your organization or that you are producing. And underpinning that is identifying and then controlling open source inside organizations. Now, we also saw a 200% increase in shift everywhere. What does that mean? Well, back in 2008, people were talking about shift left, and now this is shift everywhere. This is every opportunity, every pull request, every push, every build, every release. There is an opportunity for assessment, so take it, and firms are doing this. This is probably underpinned by a 68% increase in automated code review, because these tools are getting better and more accurate. What we saw, though, however, was a decrease in the hard-to-do things. So these are things like centralized defect management or breaking models with attack models and architectural risk analysis. Hopefully, with the advent of AI, that will start to go up as we can start to automate some of those things. Now then, if you take a look at the BSIM, there are a bunch of tables. It's a free document to download. I recommend you do it. There's some other things in there that may be useful for you. Okay. So what about the future? Well, further refinement of product security culture. Some of us are probably old enough in the room to remember like the 90s and the noughties and testing and the QA departments and all that kind of stuff. And then we see how actually that became part of the responsibility of the development teams, the engineering teams. So you ended up having software developer in test and maybe the QA people just governing that. Well, we're now starting to see that product teams are starting to own security risk and security responsibility and building more secure programs. So that's a good thing. Certainly there's more regulation on the horizon. You can see with DORA, if you're in finance, you'll definitely know about that. More about that in a moment. And the expansion of AI-generated code, which brings its own problems with plagiarism and it producing vulnerable code. The integration of machine learning models into software, it's alarming, the lack of care that I see where that has happened. And the kind of burying head in sand act that can happen. And the use of AI in the SDLC. So actually automate, we saw that drop, that hard thing to do. Using AI to do threat modeling is very much a thing. It's something we're doing and something we're using to automate as part of our managed service. In terms of regulation seen on the horizon, I think we can see that probably it's going to be more challenging. If we look at what the the SEC in the US tried to do with SolarWinds, they failed, but with the SolarWinds thing, they wanted to make this a criminal thing. They want to move things from investigation to criminalization. So we as security people need to be very careful that we don't end up being involved in what could be classed as a criminality due to lack of due care and attention around security. And in that case, it was software security. So what can we do? And what do firms do? Well, there's something we call the BSIM SC, supply chain BSIM. And you can ask your customers, your vendors these questions. Tell us about your software security group. Who's responsible for this initiative? What about policy? Or maybe you have policy as code if you're a company that's automation first. Show us the dashboards and artifacts that show the outputs from the assessments that you do. How often do you perform security testing? Who does it? Will you allow us to test it? If they can't answer those questions, like Gartner say, they are probably not suitable to be a provider for you. Okay, really quickly, trends on the horizon. Obviously, I'm going to talk a little bit about AI. So in a report by Reversing Labs, they identified that OpenAI was the second largest source of leaked shared secrets. And if you consider then that over half of global organizations suffered a supply chain attack over the past year, part of that is going to be AI, and if people aren't very careful about how they use AI, machine learning, large language models in their software, that will become a bigger and bigger problem. What threats have we got? Well, if you use phone banking, you've got voice cloning. My voice is my password, big problem. I remember seeing a TED Talk, some guy saying, oh, hey, we need to stop using passwords and use voice cloning. That was in 2012. Who knew just a few years ahead voice cloning would be such a trivial thing to do. Same with face cloning and deep faking, live deep fake, actually. A Hong Kong company lost, it was the bank lost 25 million after allegedly the CFO called up via Zoom and made them do a transfer. IP loss, if you've got your secrets and engineers are, even spell checking, or even if it's just a case of Zoom is transcribing what's happening. Where are those secrets going? Where is the LLM? What data does it touch? Who has access to it? And then retrieval augmented generational attacks. Meta, for example, suffered with racist content being introduced into Llama 3. The great people at OWASP have created an OWASP LLM top 10, much like the OWASP top 10, if you would have heard of, probably. And then what do? Well, this is what we do for the AI, considering AI as part of a new software development lifecycle. It's really important to have your teams trained. It's really important to know where your LLMs are, where your data is, who touches it, and finally have secure ML ops. So thank you very much for that. I'd encourage you to take a look at the BSIM. It's free, it's 94 pages. It's really valuable stuff, and we'll continue to do it, I hope, for a long time. But I would ask you to download it. And of course, we do training as well as tools and consulting. Thank you very much.